one of the things that where we're presenting in October, what I'll be presenting in October is assuming that you might have the opportunity to do in-person presentations. Back in the old days where we actually used to go to conference rooms and present to customers, not everything is done over Zoom. And during that training, we're going to talk a lot about ways that you can use your body language to enhance your presenting. Well, during the pandemic, all of a sudden everybody was working from home and we had to do all of these presentations that we used to do in person. We had to do them from our screen and our camera. And that limited a bit what we could do in terms of presenting. But it does not necessarily mean our presentations can't still be engaging. And that's really what we're striving for in this next few minutes that I'm going to be talking with you guys is how to keep your presentations engaging, even when you're just sitting here talking from your own laptop in your office, home office. Yes, I would prefer to present in person. I think that's the best way to do it, but it doesn't mean we cannot keep our audience's attention. And so I have several tips here. This is just going to be a series of tips with visual representations in some cases. The first thing is to personalize your presentation. My anecdote for this is our last all hands call. I happened to be in Plano at the time, and I was doing some training, presentation skills training for interns on the day of our all hands call. And so we broke for an hour during the all hands call. After we got back together as a group, I asked everybody to name one thing about one presenter during the call that they remembered. And literally everybody had the same answer. And it was with Joe, who had talked about being interested in mountain biking. That was one of his hobbies. That's the one thing they remembered. And that is something that really can help you connect with your audience when you actually tell them a little bit about yourself. You can even enhance it further as he did in his presentation. So, for example, if I'm going to talk about my trip that I took to China, to the Great Wall of China last year in some context, instead of just talking about it, let's show it. If you have something to show, again, this helps to personalize you with your audience. They get to know a little bit more about you, which makes them like you a little bit more and be more interested in what you have to say. Staying connected with your audience. This is something that can be very challenging over Zoom. You guys have all had Zoom calls where some of your attendees are spending their entire call like this or like that or like this. That's because they're looking at their monitor instead of looking at the camera. And one of the things that we talk about with in-person training, one of the most important aspects of doing presentations with people is eye contact. Eye contact is how you connect with your audience. I use the analogy in my training of being on a date when you're on a first date with somebody. If there's no eye contact during that first date, well, then there's no connection being made. And if there's no connection being made on the first date, what are the odds of getting a second date with that person? Pretty slim to none. The same thing can be true when you're presenting. If you don't connect with your audience at all, they may not be as interested in bringing you back. So over Zoom, you're not really going to connect with your audience when you're looking in strange places. Why you'd be looking up, I don't know, but you never know. What you want to do is be spending as much time as you can really engaging with your audience with the camera, looking into the camera. So you can do that more effectively based on where your camera is in terms of your overall workstation. Now, first off, I know some people do tend to use the camera on their laptop. This is especially something you have to do if you're not at your home office, if you happen to be at a Starbucks doing the meeting. And the problem with the laptop camera is they don't tend to be the most flattering in terms of how we look to our audience. I would never, ever share this photo of myself with anybody on social media. It is not a flattering picture for me. And that came from my laptop camera. So, whenever possible, you'll want to use an external camera. This is something we all did during the pandemic. I remember I went to go get a new camera from Best Buy 2 weeks into the pandemic. They were out, they had none. I had to wait a few weeks to get another camera from Best Buy, which of course I had to pick up outside. They weren't even doing it in person, in store at the time. But where you place your camera is important. When you place it over to the right, that's what's going to cause you to look like you're looking off. Maybe we'll place it to the left. But again, that's what causes us to be looking like this during our Zoom calls because I'm looking at my screen, but my camera happens to be over here, catching the side of my face, my profile. What I recommend is you place that camera, which is where mine is, right here in front of me. You place the camera. If you have two monitors like I do, place it right between the two monitors, right above them. And then instead of, what we tend to do when we're presenting is we tend to look at our Zoom window. So if my Zoom window is over here on my right monitor, I'm still going to be looking like this, watching myself on the Zoom window. So instead, place your Zoom window right in between your two monitors. And that way, when you're watching yourself or anybody else, you're watching it like this. I'm not looking into my camera right now, but it does look like I am. In addition, if you want to have notes during your call, you can also do that with some Post-it notes, if you still own Post-it notes, and place those right by your camera, as opposed to having notes over here on the right side of your screen or the left side of your screen, which again causes you to look like this the entire time. Just this simple act of camera placement and how you present into your camera is going to help you with eye contact. It actually appears that the person is talking right to you and they're creating eye contact with you, which then helps you connect with your audience. Another thing that I recommend, this is something I've been recommending recently, is to suggest to your users, and this is especially true if you're doing a work call with your team, that's one thing. But if you're actually doing a formal presentation with a customer, and there's going to be several people from the customer attending all over Zoom, have them use the speaker view option within Zoom. Now, I know I'm using Zoom here. This call is not really using Teams. Teams has a lot of similar options. I just don't have the options for Teams. But most of our external calls are going to be using Zoom anyway. But you can have a screen grab like I have right here that shows your audience. I recommend you use speaker view because what that will show the audience while they're watching you is they can see your slides on one side of the screen and they can see you presenting on the other. If they're not seeing you, all they're watching is your slides, then you might as well turn your camera off. And we're going to lose that very important part of presenting effectively over Zoom, which is me. They didn't necessarily join the Zoom call just so they could watch my slides. They want to watch you. And one of the nice things about the speaker view is users can actually adjust themselves how much of their screen is allocated to the slides and how much is allocated to the presenter just by sliding that little bar. And that really helps the presenter the attendees stay engaged because now they're watching your slides, but they're also watching you. They're watching both at the same time. Muting your audience. So if you're going to use speaker view, even if you're not going to use speaker view, you still want to ask your audience to mute themselves, or you can do it yourself. If you're going to use that speaker view that I just showed you, and people are not muted, you've all seen this before. Zoom is very, very particular. It's very sensitive on how it picks up on the things that we do as audience members. All it takes is for me to cough or to ask my, somebody at home a question, and all of a sudden I'm being picked up on audio. And as soon as I'm being picked up on audio, Zoom assumes I am the new speaker. And so that's going to replace the actual speaker's screen for my attendees. That's going to replace it with my screen where I'm just coughing. And that's just going to happen constantly during the meeting. Every single person that makes any kind of a noise, their monitor, their camera is going to pick up. Even if they're not sharing their camera, it'll just be the picture of them. So the way to avoid that is to make sure your audience is muted. So you can do it a couple of ways. I have this screen on my intro slide, just saying, make sure that you're on mute and ask them nicely. The other thing you can do is if you're setting up the meeting itself, you're the person who's going to be creating the meeting to send out the invites. You can set this up in the advanced options of the Zoom meeting so that it'll automatically mute people when they enter the call. And that's what I do with all of my calls. If somebody comes off of mute, that's what you're going to have to do when everybody's muted. When you want to do Q&A, you want to make it interactive, which I also recommend. We're going to talk about that in a few moments. You want people to be able to talk, so they need to unmute themselves. You let them know that. Not everybody remembers to remute themselves after they've asked you a question. So you can just monitor your participants window and click on the mute button to immediately mute somebody. You can also use that mute all button just to make sure before your meeting starts that everybody is muted except for yourself as the speaker. So those of you that have taken my training before, those of you that came to our sales kickoff a couple of years ago in Chicago, I did a whole session on using effective slides. I'm not going to recover that entire thing. I only have a couple of things that I want to talk about in terms of using effective slides for Zoom presenting. I have this in my training. Some of you will recall this who have taken my training. The presentation that we're doing for an hour should not just be the PowerPoint. That is not, if all they're wanting to do is watch our PowerPoint, just send them the PowerPoint and save them the time of having to attend a meeting. That is not the whole presentation. You need to be the presentation along with your PowerPoints. Now, that being said, some of my tips. First, avoid those busy slides. I call this a busy slide with way too much on there. Too many things for the audience to look at, and it's overwhelming to them. We're going to just not include those. I personally say don't include those in any presentations, whether it's Zoom or in person. They're just not good for presenting. They're fine for handouts, something you want to share with the customer. You want them to read it later. Great. By all means, share that, but not for presenting. One of my mottos is less words, more images. Every time you're going to do a presentation, go through your slides and remove a few words. Every time. Because I guarantee you have too many words in your slides. And try to replace them with images. So for example, I've seen before where somebody has a slide with text that says, we have many built-in dashboards displaying tons of useful data and iFocus. Okay, great. But how could I replace that with an image? How about an actual image? Instead of having text that talks about our dashboards, how about just saying, look at these amazing dashboards that we have. You can almost always replace text with an image. And it doesn't have to be a Forescout product image. It can be anything. So, for example, we've seen slides like this before. I made this slide yesterday. Build a strong partnership with Forescout. And the presenter is going to spend 10 minutes talking about all these bullet list items. Blah, 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 blah. That bores the audience. I guarantee you. Audiences will always tell you the bullet lists are not engaging. Now, they have a really nice graphic on the screen. That's great. But I say, when you have a good graphic, use that graphic to your advantage. Fill the screen. and find ways to just use it as your way of navigating through your own presentation. Now I can talk about our business growth and market differentiation. I don't need the bullets on the slide with all the text under the bullet. Now I can talk about our technical and product advantages and so on. This is going to cause them to engage more on me and not just sitting there staring at my slides and reading my slides. They're going to be watching me more in that speaker view. Less words, more images. Anytime you're presenting to your customers, anytime. And then finally, using effective animation. Here I have another bullet list where we talk about some of the Forescout product benefits, how we discover assets in the network, how we can then classify those assets with things like device type. And then we can simultaneously discover and classify all over the network. And even when devices move. Again, this is not engaging. This is not telling the story. This is reading the story. I'm reading the slides to the audience. They're reading them along with me. They don't need me to read. How about instead of tell them, how about we show them how we can discover assets and then classify them, getting details like the device type and the OS. We can actually discover multiple assets simultaneously throughout the network and get information about them. And even when devices move around the network, we can continue to discover and classify them. Again, just simply using effective animations and graphics is a lot more engaging for your audience than just reading text-based bullet list slides. One of the best ways that you can keep your audience engaged, I'm going to be really, and by the way, just so you guys know, my goal is to have this exact same presentation with all the speakers for our SE training in October, because I want to keep, you guys are going to be attending 5 hours a day of Zoom calls. In order to sit in front of your monitor for 5 hours a day, you need to be watching more than just bulletless slides after bulletless slides after bulletless slides. There's got to be more to it. So using audience participation is a great way to keep your audience engaged, whether you're doing in-person training or Zoom training. Now, in-person training, when I do my technical training, I tend to put people in breakout rooms. You guys go in this room, conference room A, you guys go in conference room B, plan something together, and then come back in 20 minutes and share it with us. That's a great way to keep them involved. Well, guess what? We can do the exact same thing in Zoom. We have Zoom breakout rooms available, and we're going to be hopefully using these quite a bit during our in-person training. Now, in order for you as a meeting organizer, in order for you to use this feature in Zoom, you have to first enable it in your profile. It is not enabled by default. So in order to enable it by default, you need to open up your profile settings in Zoom and go to your settings option. Then you need to go to the meeting option across the top. And then you go to your advanced in-meeting settings. That is where you will see the option to turn on breakout rooms. It's as simple as that. You can typically accept all the default checkboxes that you get when you turn that on. Once you've turned that on, it's on for all of your meetings. You don't have to go in and do anything else in order to use it. However, in order to use it during a meeting, in the middle of the meeting, this is something that you don't have to plan ahead of time. You can literally do it while you're having your meeting. You can say, okay, everybody, we're going to break out into breakout rooms. Now, just so you know, you can set this up ahead of time before you actually get to this point in the meeting. But once you've enabled that in your Zoom profile, you will see breakout rooms on your Zoom toolbar. And when you open that up, you can first choose how many different breakout rooms you want to create. I've got 12 people. I want to have 3 people per room, so I'll create 4 rooms. Whatever you want to do. Then you can also have it just automatically assign participants into those rooms, or you can choose to do it manually yourself. And if you choose to do it manually yourself, then after you've created the breakout rooms, you'll get the next screen that'll show your 1, 2, 3, 4 breakout rooms, however many you've created. And then you can go in and assign the people who are on the Zoom call. This is only going to let you see people who are on the Zoom call presently. You can then assign the particular people that you want for breakout room 1 and 2, and so on. And once you have that set up, then you can just click on Open All Rooms. What's going to happen as soon as you click on that button, Open All Rooms, then your audience, all the participants are going to get this message on their screen that you're being invited to join room 1 or room 2 or so on. And they'll stay connected to the Zoom call. It does not disconnect them from the Zoom call. But as soon as they do that, they leave the main Zoom meeting and now they go to their breakout rooms. Now they can do whatever you have asked them to do. And one of the nice things is while they're in the breakout rooms, you can join breakout room 1. And you can say, hey, does anybody have any questions? You guys doing okay? All right. Keep at it. And then you can leave that room and then you could join breakout room 2. Ask if they have any questions. See, just like real breakout rooms in an actual office, you can enter and leave the rooms to see how your teams are doing. So that is a really great way to add that interactive element to a good meeting. Another feature that Zoom offers is polls and quizzes. Great way to be interactive. Once again, you need to, there's a two-step process, okay? The first step is you need to enable the ability for you to create polls and quizzes. You just do that one time. Then you need to go create the poll or the quiz prior to your meeting starting. You don't want to do this in the middle of your meeting. I don't even know if you can do it in the middle of your meeting. I don't think you can. You need to set this up before your meeting starts. So again, in this case, you're going to go to your meeting settings. You're going to go to your basic settings. There's a ton of Zoom basic meeting settings. You're going to go down to the bottom where you'll find the ability to do the meetings polls and quizzes and enable that for your profile. Once you've enabled it, you're good to go. But then, as I said, you then need to go, maybe the day before your meeting, you need to go and add the poll or polls that you want to use during your meeting. So to do that, in your Zoom window, in your Zoom profile, you can go to the actual meetings option on the left. Then there's two things you can do. First, you could just create a new meeting from scratch right from here. Schedule a new meeting and you can add the poll while you're scheduling this new meeting. Or if you've already scheduled the meeting through Outlook, let's say, and it's in your list, you can then select that meeting itself. Don't start it, just select the meeting, and that'll open up your meeting settings where you can mute everybody. You can choose to mute everybody upon entry, for example. But what you're going to do is you're going to go to the polls and quizzes option at the top. And this is going to show you all the polls and quizzes you have used in the past. You can actually reuse the same poll more than once. So for example, if I have the exact same call with my Americas SEs in the morning, and then my Europe and APAC SEs in the afternoon, I can use the same poll. Or you can create a new one. Very easy to do this. If you've ever created any kind of a quiz in SurveyMonkey or something like that, it's very similar. First, I recommend giving the poll itself a name because you're going to be selecting this poll while you're in your Zoom meeting. So if you don't recognize which poll or quiz you're starting, it's going to be very confusing. So this will be my check-in at the end of module 1. Then you can start by creating questions. And you can create just one question for the poll. You can create several questions. You'll notice that each question has a different type. There are actually several question types that you can create. The single choice where they just pick one of your answers, multiple choice where they have check boxes, they can choose several. You can do fill in the blank polls and so forth. So each poll or quiz can have one or multiple questions. It's up to you. And then when you're done, you can save this poll, and you can either save it as a poll for a specific meeting only. It's just going to be used in this meeting. That means I cannot reuse it in other meetings, or you can save it to the library, where you can then reuse it as many times as you like. And then you will see your poll just waiting for your meeting to start. Then, while you're in your meeting, and now we're at the end of module 1, we will now see that I have polls available in my Zoom toolbar. And this is where I will now select which poll. Remember, I told you it's a good idea to give your polls names that resonate, that make sense to you. So I want to now do the module 1 check-in, which had 2 questions. So I'll select that and then click on the launch button. As soon as I click on the launch button, then this is what my users will see. The users will now be presented with their poll or their quiz. They can go through and answer all the questions and then click on submit. And while that's happening, for me as the presenter, I can sit there and watch in real time as results come in. I can see what answers are getting what responses, or what questions are getting what responses. And eventually, I will see that everybody has now filled in their questions. Now, of course, that may not always happen. I might have 10 people and it'll say 8 of 10 have participated. I wait 20, 30 more seconds. It doesn't change. Okay, we're done. I'm not going to wait forever for the last 2 people. They might have gone to the bathroom. So then I can end the poll. And as soon as I do that, then I will see the final results. There they are. Now I see the final results, but only I am seeing the results. The presenter, I can then share those results with my audience, and my audience will get this screen on while they're watching. They can now see everything. So sometimes you want to share the results. Sometimes you just want to see it for yourself, so you know where you're doing well and where you need to improve on. Who knows? But those are a great way to add participation. Breakout rooms, polls and quizzes, and just ask questions periodically. Ask open questions to your audience and let them answer them. Finally, I just have some basic tips to help you when you're doing your Zoom presentations. When you have, for some reason, you're not just sharing a PowerPoint presentation, but you're sharing your window, your whole window, because during your presentation, you want to do a demo. And in order to do the demo, you have to connect to your environment. So I have to have my browser window opened. When you're just using a regular browser window, everybody attending can see all of your bookmarks. They can see your profile information on the right. They can see some of the most recently, what kind of sites you go to. That can get you in trouble, depending on what kind of sites you go to during your regular day. And then when you start typing the environment name, they also see some of the last things that you have, viewed. We don't need people to see all that. That can be embarrassing, and it's not professional. So the way to avoid that, whether you're using Chrome or Edge, they both have the same idea, is you can come here and just open a guest Chrome window. And I recommend opening it before you even start your meeting, and just have this window ready to go when you start your meeting. Now, there's no toolbar. There's no personal information, no photos of me. There's nothing in the middle of the window that shows what I've done recently. And most importantly, when I start typing a URL, that list is completely empty. That saves my reputation, but it also makes me look more professional as a presenter. Also, you've all seen before when you're sharing your entire window. If you're just sharing your PowerPoint, you don't have to worry about this so much. But if you're sharing your entire window, you're going to be getting notifications from Teams and from Outlook and godly knows where else, whatever other tools you use that send you notifications. And that can be very distracting and possibly damaging if you get a notification where everybody can read the notification text. Who knows what may be in that? So in Windows, what you can do is you can go to your settings, your system settings, and under the notifications on the left. And by the way, we will be sharing this PowerPoint, so you don't have to memorize all this. And of course, I'm recording this call. But on the notifications on the left, you can simply turn off all notifications. That way you don't have to worry about whether it's Outlook or Teams or any other chat programs. It just turns off all notifications during your call. Mac users have their own way of doing this. I'm not a Mac user, but apparently you can click on this and you can use the Do Not Disturb feature, which will do essentially the same idea. Also, think about the microphone you're using. You do want to sound professional. You want to have a good, strong voice. You don't want it to be poor audio. There's so many options available to you. I'm not going to belabor this. You can have headphones that have a microphone attached. You can have what I have. Normally, when I do Zoom calls, I try to use smaller headphones so I don't look like Mickey Mouse. And you can even have a nice professional microphone attached over your desk. If you do a lot of calls, that could be good for you to sound really professional. But as I said, think about how these make you look. Do you want to look like this, like I'm looking right now, because my other earphones are not charged? The first picture, by the way, I'm wearing earphones. You just can't see them. They're hidden inside my ears. Lighting is also a big issue when we're presenting over Zoom.
Here are some easy tips for improving the lighting for your video calls at home.
We'll just watch this quick video.
Let me take you on a little journey through my office, starting with natural light. Hey, a window. The first rule of natural light is don't have it behind you. If you're backlit like this, your face is going to look too dark or your background's going to look too bright. Just avoid that altogether. If you're lucky enough to have a big window in front of you where you work, that's great. Most of the work is done for you. You have this nice, big, beautiful light source that will light your face right up. But there are a couple of things you can do to make the natural light work for you a little bit better. So in this scenario, the natural light is lighting my face, but my entire background is completely dark. And that might work for you if you don't want to draw attention to your background, if it's cluttered or embarrassing. But if you want a more even, sort of natural, filled out look, then there are a couple of things you can do. You might be tempted to turn on your overhead lights or other incandescent lamps you have in the room, and you really want to be careful with that because when you mix natural light with indoor light, you're going to get some color casts due to the color temperature difference. So you're going to either maybe look orange or you're going to look blue, and it really throws off the look. Unless you really need that extra boost of light, stick to either natural light or incandescent light. Another thing you can do to make the natural light look a little better is instead of facing directly straight on into the window, you can pivot yourself a little bit at about a 45-degree angle to the window, like this. This will give you a bit of a shadow on one side of your face. It is a little bit more flattering, it de-emphasizes your blemishes, and just has that little bit of a cinematic touch. If you're in a situation like this where very little natural light is hitting your face, you're going to have to rely on indoor lights, preferably some lamps that you have. One of the biggest mistakes is when people put desk lamps on the corner of their desk facing directly at them. You end up with a really harsh look like this. In this scenario, there's a bare bulb lamp shining right into my face. Not only do I end up with these really harsh shadows on one side of my face, but it's just not pleasant to have this big giant light shining in your face all the time, especially for longer meetings. But there's a pretty easy fix. If your lamp has any kind of flexibility at all, you can turn it around and face it at the opposing wall. Now the light is bouncing off.
So really good tips there. I'm just going to stop that. This is something else that I recommend. If you have the ability to expense things, order yourself a couple of these really great desktop lamps that have different color options available. You do want to look your best when you're presenting over Zoom. You don't want to look harsh in any way. And that also has to do with your background as well. This is something that came up a lot during the pandemic. You know, people were presenting from home on TV. Newscasters were presenting from home, and we could see everything behind them. In this case, it doesn't have much behind them, but it's kind of blah, it's kind of bland. Whereas this person has maybe too much behind him. We don't need to see every single book and video this person has. This is somebody who's actually using their bookshelf effectively. It actually looks nice and it looks pleasant. Whereas this person, you might know this person, also in front of a bookshelf, but it has a very different effect. It's too distracting. It's very hard to focus on the person when there's so much behind them. Sometimes we're tempted to use our own personal pictures as our background, or maybe we want to use the backgrounds that were given by our company, which we have available to us. And those can be fine, those can be nice. But many of you have noticed one big issue when you use these photo backgrounds is that certain things disappear. So if I'm using hand gestures, my hands will disappear. One time I picked up my dog, showed my dog to the audience. They couldn't see him. He was disappeared out of the screen. So that's something to take into account when you're using these photo backgrounds, including the Forescout backgrounds. Two easy background options. So this is my office that I had previously. It's not where I'm at now. Very nice, simple wall. Okay. But one of the things we can do is go to our meeting settings. I've seen some of you do this, and you can just blur your background. It creates a more soft effect. People don't have to see everything behind you, but it truly adds more emphasis to you. It has that effect. It adds the emphasis to you while you're presenting. So I really like the blur effect. You also can touch up your appearance, which I like doing. I think it's great. And you can also adjust for the lighting. Zoom has a really good quality of how it adjusts for lighting. I want to show you the difference. When I adjusted for lighting, I used the background fade and I touched up my appearance. I look years younger on the right. I really like the way I look much better on the right than I do on the left. So those are some things you can do. Another tip that I have, and I would use this myself, but I can't because I have really high ceilings in my room, is you can just buy a sheet, a nice sheet with a nice color, and just hang it behind you. I used to have two hooks on my wall, on my ceiling. And before meetings, I would hang the sheet. And then you have a nice, simple background, no distraction, not all your personal things behind you. So that's a nice little cheap fix for a nice, simple background. And then finally, consider what you're wearing. So in this case, I have a very nice basic shirt, it does not take any emphasis away from me presenting. It's not distracting and it does not clash with my background. Whereas this is also a nice, simple, basic shirt. However, because it's the same color as my background, it can tend to give us a bit of a talking head look during the Zoom call. So the first shirt really worked better. And avoid busy shirts, loud, busy shirts. It's just like having too much in the background, too many books and things. It's just distracting. It takes attention away from us. And that's who we want people watching is us, not what we have in our room, in our house. And finally, just take note of where you are and how that makes your audio sound. If you were presenting in this office here, all these beautiful walls and hardwood floors, that is going to create an echo effect during your call. There's no way you can avoid it. And you can fix that by actually purchasing some sound equipment for your home office to put around you during a call. And that'll help with that sound. Some people actually hang blankets in their room. Blankets will help with the echoing that you get. If you have a nice, simple home office with basic walls, you don't have to worry about this. So again, the whole point of this, it's not just for you guys. I really want to see this taken throughout Forescout. Anybody who's presenting, whether I have people presenting to you guys or you guys are presenting to our customers and our partners, let's shine. Let's look our best. Let's not look unprofessional. Let's look the height of professional and stay engaged and keep our audiences engaged. If you'd use just 20% of the tips I gave you today, you're going to improve your Zoom presenting. And again, we're going to be doing more presenting in about a month and a half. So look forward to that. Does anybody have any last questions before we wrap things up today? So as you say your goodbyes, look right into the camera. So thank you all for attending. I appreciate your time today. Reach out to me if you have any questions. If not, we'll see you soon at our next call. Thank you very much.